This is happening right now in Jerusalem. The streets went silent. People left their work and looked up at the sky. Even reporters had no words. And when I tell you why, you'll understand what's truly unfolding. The mainstream media isn't covering this. They don't want you to see what's really happening, but the truth can't stay hidden forever. You're watching this because God wanted you to see it. Something in your spirit recognizes this moment as different. The ancient stones of the old city shimmered under the morning sun. The dome of the rock glowed gold beneath a clear sky. Synagogues, churches and mosques all stood in silence. The same soil where prophets walked, the same streets that heard the Messiah's footsteps. It began at 7:14 a.m. Jerusalem time. Rabbi Moshe Goldstein was leading morning prayers at the Western Wall when he heard it first. A sound that wasn't quite thunder, wasn't quite music, but something that resonated from the very stones beneath his feet. Within moments, every person in the old city had stopped what they were doing. "I've studied Torah for 40 years, Rabbi Goldstein later told us, his voice trembling with awe. But this morning, the words seemed to lift from the ancient scrolls and echo in the air around us. The sound grew stronger, not louder, but deeper, as if the earth itself was joining in an ancient song. Shopkeepers emerged from their stores, pilgrims fell to their knees, and even the tour guides who had seen everything in this holy city stood speechless. What the prophets saw thousands of years ago is unfolding before our eyes. In Zechariah 8:23 we read, "In those days 10 men from every nation and language will take hold of one Jew by the hem of his garment and say, 'Let us go with you, because we have heard that God is with you.'" And in Acts 2:5-6, "Now there were staying in Jerusalem God-fearing Jews from every nation under heaven. When they heard this sound, a crowd came together in bewilderment." The continuity of prophecy, my friend. What was written is becoming reality. Mrs. Sarah Chen, a pilgrim from Singapore, described it perfectly. "I felt called to come to Jerusalem 3 months ago. I didn't know why. Now I understand. God was positioning His people for this moment. Do you realize we are witnessing what generations only dreamed of? God is moving the pieces of the end times. The veil between heaven and earth is getting thinner, but this was only the beginning." As the morning progressed, something even more extraordinary began to unfold. The ancient rabbinical courts, which hadn't convened in emergency session for decades, were suddenly calling together. Phone calls went out across the city. "Come quickly. The signs we've been waiting for, they're here." What happened next stopped a city, but what's coming will stop the entire world. My friend, can you feel this in your spirit? Are you ready for what comes next? Today, something impossible appeared over the Temple Mount. The rabbis gathered like they hadn't in living memory. The Sanhedrin, representatives from every major yeshiva, scholars who had spent their lives studying the ancient texts, all converging on one location with unprecedented urgency. They don't want you to see what's really happening, but the truth can't stay hidden forever. The Beth Din chamber, usually reserved for the most sacred of discussions, was filled beyond capacity. Rabbi Yitzchak Cohen, one of Israel's most respected Torah scholars, stood before the assembly with documents that hadn't been consulted in centuries. "Brothers," his voice carried the weight of millennia, "we have confirmed the alignment. The signs spoken of by our fathers, the calculations of the ancient sages, they point to this time, this season." The chamber fell into a silence so profound that you could hear the whispers of prayer from the Western Wall below. These weren't men given to excitement or hasty proclamations. These were scholars who measured their words like precious stones. Rabbi David Stern from the Temple Institute stepped forward with a scroll that seemed to glow in the afternoon light, streaming through the ancient windows. "The measurements have been completed. The preparations spoken of in Ezekiel, they align with what we're witnessing." In Ezekiel 43:10-11, the prophet wrote, "Son of man, describe the temple to the people of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their sins. Let them consider its perfection, and if they are ashamed of all they have done, make known to them the design of the temple. And Jesus himself declared in Matthew 24:32 and 33, Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. When its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. The fig tree, my friend, Israel. The tender twigs, the leaves coming out, all pointing to the season we're entering. Outside the chamber, word was spreading through Jerusalem like wildfire, not through social media or news reports, but through something far more ancient, the network of faith that connects every believing heart in the holy city. Father Michael Kowalski, a Catholic priest who had served in Jerusalem for 20 years, found himself drawn to the gathering despite never receiving an invitation. I was in my chapel, preparing for evening mass, when I felt an overwhelming urge to come here. As I walked through the old city, I saw Jews, Christians, Muslims, all moving in the same direction, all with the same look of wonder in their eyes. An imam from the nearby mosque approached the gathering, not with suspicion, but with recognition. Or, in our oldest texts, he said quietly to one of the rabbis, there are prophecies about a time when all the children of Abraham would recognize the same signs in the heavens. This isn't hysteria. This is prophecy in motion. What the ancient seers glimpsed in visions, what the apostles wrote about in letters to distant churches, what the rabbis preserved in sacred texts through centuries of exile. It's all converging in our time. But as the sun began to set over Jerusalem, painting the ancient stones in shades of gold and crimson, the real revelation was yet to come. The emergency assembly was just the preparation. The true sign, the one that would confirm everything, was about to manifest over the most contested, most holy, most watched piece of real estate on earth. While the world sleeps, God is calling those who are awake. In the next chapter, I'll show you what appeared over the Temple Mount that night. Until then, stay ready, stay faithful, Maranatha. Jerusalem stopped this morning for a reason no one can explain. At exactly 11:47 p.m., as the emergency rabbinical assembly was concluding their historic session, something appeared over the Temple Mount that defied every attempt at rational explanation. Even reporters had no words. But the truth can't stay hidden forever. It started as what witnesses described as a shifting in the air, not quite visible, but impossible to ignore. The security cameras positioned around the Temple Mount began recording something that would later be analyzed by experts across 3 continents, yet none could provide a scientific explanation. Rabbi Sarah Feldman, one of the few women permitted to observe the assembly, was the first to point skyward. "Look," she whispered, and every eye in the chamber turned toward the ancient windows facing the mount. Above the dome of the rock, the air itself seemed to be writing, not with letters that could be read by human eyes, but with patterns of light that spoke directly to the spirit, geometric forms that pulsed with the rhythm of a cosmic heartbeat, spiraling upward into the star-filled Jerusalem sky. You're watching this because God wanted you to see it. Something in your spirit recognizes this moment as different. David Martinez, a Christian tour guide from Mexico, was leading a late-night prayer walk when the phenomenon began. "I've brought thousands of pilgrims to this spot over the years," he told us, tears streaming down his face. But tonight, it felt like the mount was alive, like it was singing. The light wasn't harsh or blinding. It was warm, inviting, familiar, like coming home after a long journey. Children stopped crying, elderly people stood straighter, and visitors from every nation found themselves speaking prayers in languages they barely remembered learning. In Isaiah 2:2-3, the prophet declared, "In the last days, the mountain of the Lord's temple will be established as the highest of the mountains. It will be exalted above the hills, and all nations will stream to it. Many peoples will come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord." And in Revelation 21:23, "The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp." The glory of God, my friend. Not metaphor, not symbolism, but the actual presence of the Almighty manifesting over the very spot where his temple once stood and will stand again. Dr. Rachel Thompson, an atmospheric physicist from Cambridge who happened to be in Jerusalem for a conference, tried to measure the phenomenon with every instrument at her disposal. "According to our equipment," she said, shaking her head in bewilderment, "there's nothing there. No electromagnetic disturbance, no unusual atmospheric conditions. Yet hundreds of people are seeing the same thing, and our cameras are recording something." As word spread through the city, people began arriving from every quarter of Jerusalem, not in panic, but in pilgrimage. Orthodox Jews from Mea Shearim, Arab Christians from Bethlehem, European pilgrims, American evangelicals, African believers, all drawn by something they couldn't explain but couldn't resist. The police cordoned off the area, but not to keep people away, to manage the orderly flow of witnesses who continued arriving throughout the night. Officer Yael Rosenberg, who had worked security around the Temple Mount for 8 years, had never seen anything like it. "Usually, this place is a powder keg," she said quietly. "Jews and Muslims, Christians and secularists, tourists and locals, everyone watching everyone else with suspicion. But tonight, they're all looking up with the same expression of wonder." At 3:33 a.m., the phenomenon reached its crescendo. The geometric patterns of light began forming what looked unmistakably like words, not in Hebrew, not in Arabic, not in any human language, but somehow every person present understood their meaning. The time of restoration has begun. My friend, can you feel this in your spirit? Do you realize we are witnessing what generations only dreamed of? This is the preview of the greatest event in human history. But as dawn approached, bringing the 4th day of these unprecedented signs, the Rabbinical Assembly prepared to make an announcement that would send shockwaves through every believing community on earth. What they were about to confirm would change everything. What happened over the Temple Mount last night was just the confirmation. In the next chapter, I'll reveal what the rabbis discovered in the ancient texts, the timeline that's been hidden for centuries. Until then, stay ready, stay faithful, Maranatha. This is happening right now in Jerusalem. At dawn on the 4th day, as the last traces of celestial light faded over the Temple Mount, the Emergency Rabbinical Assembly emerged with a document that had been sealed for over 2,000 years. People left their work and looked up at the sky. Even reporters had no words. And when I tell you what they found, you'll understand what's truly unfolding. The mainstream media isn't covering this. They don't want you to see what's really happening. But the truth can't stay hidden forever. Rabbi Moshe Goldstein stood before the assembled crowd in the courtyard outside the chamber, holding a scroll that scholars thought had been lost during the destruction of the Second Temple. His voice carried across the ancient stones as he began to speak. "My brothers and sisters, we have confirmed what our fathers hoped they would never have to confirm. The ancient calculations, preserved through centuries of exile, point to this exact time in history. The scroll, authenticated by 3 independent teams of archaeologists and dated to the 1st century CE, contained mathematical prophecies that had never been fully understood until now. The calculations, based on lunar cycles, sabbatical years, and cosmic alignments, had been waiting for the right moment to be decoded. Dr. Elena Kozlov, a mathematician from Moscow University who had been called in to verify the calculations, stood beside the rabbi. "I've spent my career studying ancient numerical systems," she said, her voice filled with awe. "But these equations, they're beyond anything I've encountered. They accurately predict astronomical events that our modern computers can barely calculate. You're watching this because God wanted you to see it. Something in your spirit recognizes this moment as different. The scroll revealed that the ancient sages had calculated not just when the signs would begin, but how long this phase of prophecy would last. According to their measurements, the phenomena that began 4 days ago were the opening movements of a divine symphony that would crescendo over the coming months. In Daniel 9:24-25, the prophet wrote, 70 sevens are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. And Jesus declared in Luke 21:28, when these things begin to take place, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near. The redemption, my friend, not just for Israel, not just for the church, but for all creation groaning in anticipation of the sons of God to be revealed. As Rabbi Goldstein continued reading from the ancient scroll, something extraordinary began happening in the crowd. People from every nation, speaking dozens of languages, began understanding the Hebrew words as if they were being spoken in their native tongues. The same phenomenon recorded in Acts 2, but happening again in the very city where the disciples first experienced it. Maria Santos, a Catholic grandmother from Brazil, grabbed her daughter's arm. Minha filha, I understand every word he's saying, but he's not speaking Portuguese. James Wilson, a Baptist minister from Alabama, found himself weeping as the ancient prophecies became clear in his mind. O Lord, he prayed aloud, you said you would pour out your Spirit in the last days. Is this what Joel saw in his vision? The scroll spoke of 3 phases: the awakening, the gathering, and the revealing. According to the ancient calculations, the awakening phase, marked by supernatural signs in Jerusalem, would last 40 days. Then would come the gathering phase, when people from every nation would be drawn to the holy city. Finally, the revealing phase, when the ultimate purpose of all prophecy would be unveiled. We are 19 days into the awakening, Rabbi Goldstein announced, his voice carrying the weight of eternity. The signs will intensify. The gathering has already begun. And the revealing, he paused, looking up at the morning sky where stars still shone despite the daylight. The revealing will change everything we thought we knew about heaven and earth. Pastor Emmanuel Okafor, who had traveled from Nigeria after seeing the news reports, raised his hand. Rabbi, my congregation has been praying for revival for 20 years. Are you saying this is the answer to our prayers? The rabbi smiled, and for a moment the weight of centuries seemed to lift from his shoulders. Pastor, what if I told you that every prayer ever prayed for the coming of God's kingdom, every tear shed for the redemption of the world, every act of faith performed in anticipation of his return, what if I told you they were all investments in this moment? This isn't hysteria. This is prophecy in motion. What the prophets saw thousands of years ago is unfolding before our eyes. As the announcement concluded, people began planning return journeys to their home countries, but not to leave permanently. They were going to gather their communities, to prepare their congregations, to share what they had witnessed. The scroll had spoken of a great gathering, and they understood their role in making it happen. The ancient timeline was no longer hidden. The 40 days of awakening, the season of gathering, the moment of revealing. And according to the calculations that had been preserved through 2 millennia of waiting, it would all culminate on a date that every believer knew by heart, the Feast of Trumpets. My friend, can you feel this in your spirit? Are you ready for what comes next? While the world sleeps, God is calling those who are awake. The timeline has been revealed. The ancient seal has been broken. What was hidden is now made known. And the next phase begins with you, wherever you are, whatever nation you call home, whatever church you attend. Now that you know this, what will you do about it? The awakening continues, the gathering is beginning, and the revealing draws near. Write in the comments, Maranatha, come, Lord Jesus. Share this message so more people awaken to what's happening. Like this video if you believe God is still speaking today. Until the next sign appears, stay ready, stay faithful, Maranatha.